what are some of the differences? What are some of the things that you see between our mode of worship as Israelites? Maybe you might not know all the modes of worship, but you've been around. You've seen how we've done it and the way that they do it. Because in a sense, that we've adopted our own traditions as we've gone along.
Yes.
But with them, they have so much more of what will be called Judaism or Judaic traditions. What are some of the differences that you see and some of the things that we do versus what they do?
First of all, I see more similarity in what is done. And I have visited synagogues around the world. I have read Torah in Barcelona, Spain. I've read Torah in Paris, France. I have read Torah in South Africa. So, and the prayer service is essentially the same, starting with Psalms, doing the Shema, doing the Amidah. Those are basically all the same. I've been in synagogue where there was no musical instruments. I've been in synagogues across this country and Canada that have choirs, like many of the Israelite communities and congregations that play instruments on Erev Shabbat and on Shabbat, as we do in the Israelite community. And so, as I compare, we are more similar than we are dissimilar. The one place that we differ the most is in the ideal of the Ruach. We are just, and one of the things that, as I tell people when I speak around this country, and say use the term Judaism, that drew me to it is because in Judaism, you can be intellectual, but that does not negate your being spiritual. And being intellectual prompts questions. And I do my best learning when I'm able to question. And so that's what Judaism afforded me. It synthesized my intellectualism with my spirituality. I believe that in most cases, most Ashkenazi Jews would tell you that African Americans or African people, period, are more spiritual. When we get visitors in our synagogue in Chicago, those people belong to synagogues, but they come to Beth Shalom for the spirituality. They want just not their mind fed, they want their spirits fed. And song does that. So we've had Ashkenazi Jews that have come and said, hey, can we join? Yes, we have a growing population of people from Central America, from Mexico, and from South America, Colombia. We have Filipinos in our community. We have biracial Jews in our community, individuals with Ashkenazi Jewish mothers and African American fathers. So the community is, we have Ashkenazi Jews who've adopted African American children in our community. So the community welcomes all. And what they do, what they learn when they come is, wow, this is how you serve God. It goes beyond what you're getting out that book. It gets when you leave and you feel the Shabbat and you feel the presence of the Most High. I felt it yesterday. When you feel that, it moves. And that's what they feel. And that's the major difference. But when it talks about the structure of the service and the prayers and the books, all of those things are very, very, very similar. Reading the Torah, the portions that are read, very similar. The chants are different. We don't chant the Torah. We don't have, I'm a cantor, I serve as a cantor in my congregation. So I do my best to do my pitches and read with the rhythm that the congregation can kind of buy into. So we don't have a trained cantor in our congregation. So that's a difference. But what the biggest difference is when you come in our congregation in Chicago is you will see a high representation of what, for lack of a better expression, the Jewish people should look like. They look like everybody. As opposed to going into a community and everybody is one ethnicity, and then when you walk in, everybody turns around and wants to ask the question, are you Jewish? I tell a joke one time. It's not a joke, it's a true story, but I tell it as a joke. I was in southern state. It was speaking that weekend and looking for a place to daven that Monday. Took my tefillin, my siddur, my talit. Happened to find the synagogue. Wasn't located too far away. Services started, I think, at 7:15. Got there at 7:15. Daven. After we davened, somebody came up to me and said, "Are you Jewish?" Now, I just davened. I got my own tefillin. I got my own talit. Right? The whole 9 yards. I said, "No. I'm not Jewish. I found this stuff outside. I wanted to see how it worked." They said, "Oh, you are Jewish." Of course I am. It's 7:15. That's when I got here. You don't advertise. I had to find you. It's hot in here. You ain't got no air conditioning. But I stayed here. So why would I be here if I wasn't a Jew? Oh, yeah, I guess that was a crazy question. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. So I believe, it is my personal belief, that the way of God, of Yisrael, is for all people. I'm crazy enough to believe that when the prophet said, "In that day 10 men from every nation will grab hold of the skirts of the garments of him that is a Jew and say, 'We will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you.'" I'm crazy enough to believe that. I'm crazy enough to believe that the Eternal said in Isaiah, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all people." And so, in understanding that God's house is a house of prayer for all people, all are welcomed. So as all are welcomed, you're welcome to come, you're welcome to study, you're welcome to learn, but you're not welcome to take over. You're not welcome to question what we do or how we do it. You're not welcome to do that. Because when I go to your synagogue, to your Beit Knesset, I'm going to be in as a guest, I'm observing, I'm going to do, and you do what you do. The minhag that you have, the customs that you have are your customs, and the customs that we have. So, for instance, at Beth Shalom in Chicago, before we have to collect offering. People brought offering on Shabbat when the temple stood. As a matter of fact, there was an offering made in the morning, and then there was an afternoon offering made as well. And that's why we do that additional prayer of tefillah of the Shemona Esrei in the afternoon, serving as our second offering for the Shabbat day. But we need the offerings of the people to survive as a community. Because for one while, someone says, "Oh, Rabbi, no, let people mail it in." I'm not going to tell you how many people didn't mail it in, okay? And if that was the system, then we wouldn't have our doors open today, okay? So we do what we have to do to survive. So, "Oh, no, you have no money on Shabbat." I said, please show me in the Torah where it says don't do that. Please show me in the Torah where it says not to make an offering on Shabbat. I've just never read it. Maybe it's there, and I just have overlooked it. But I have not seen where putting money in on the Shabbat to build your community is offensive to God. And if it's not offensive to God, then please don't you be offended by it. You don't do it, fine. And we're not asking you to do anything that you find offensive. When you get home, please make a check out and send it back in. Mm-hmm. And many of them do. Right. Okay.
I just want to dive into a little of what you spoke and how you spoke when we use certain terminologies. I've noticed in speaking to you that you've used the word Jewish, Jew, in reference to us, and as far as the European, the Europeans, and our community as Israelites, we weren't taught that we were Jews or Jewish
Right.
or used that terminology. We were taught that we were Israelites. Why do you use the terminology Jewish or Jew in contrast to being an Israelite? Because that would seem more fitting to us. But, I'll let you explain.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I'm delighted and glad that you asked the question. I see all of the terms as synonymous. We have the word Yehudi in the Torah. We have the term Israel in the Torah. And we have the term Israelite in the Torah, or Israeli, the plural, in the Torah. And when I say Torah, I'm speaking the entire context from Genesis all the way to 2 Chronicles. So within that context, when we get to, there's a book that we read. It's about the folks in Babylon. I think the young lady's name is Esther. She has an uncle. Her uncle's name happens to be Mordecai. Mordecai very clearly knows that he's from the tribe of Benjamin. And it says, he's a Benjaminite, then it says Yehudi. So he doesn't simply he's not simply stopped at being called a Benjaminite, he's called Yehudi, he's called a Jew. Mordecai the Jew. And so he's a Jew. In the prophet Jeremiah, the term is used. So that term does not absence out, for me, people of African descent. Why? If Mordecai was from the tribe of Benjamin, when we then look at Psalms, the 7th chapter, and if you have the Hebrew Bible, the first verse of that psalm said that this is a niguim for Saul, the Cushite. The Benjaminite, the Cushite, and that's Saul. So the Benjaminite people are called by David Cushites. So in the book of Esther, Mordecai is called a Benjaminite, meaning he's a Cushite, and he's called a Jew, a Judite. So that over the course of history, one of the papers that I wrote many, many years ago was God never called us Hebrew Israelites. God called us Hebrews. God calls us Israel. You gave the baby a bath and you're getting ready to throw the water out and the baby's still in the tub. So we throw the baby out with the bad water. We cannot allow ourselves, I don't believe, to give any community any type of exclusivity over terminology. I believe that many of the terms that evolved in our community for defining ourselves as Israelite, which, by the way, most Sephardic congregations called themselves, when they first came to this country and in other countries that they were in, there was a community of Sephardic Israelite congregations, okay? The Reform community recently dropped Hebrew out of their name. But they were the organization of Hebrew congregations, okay? So that those phraseologies and terminologies have been there. But when we make the term Yehudi, when we make the term Jew, something that is exclusively belonging to the Ashkenazi community, I think that we're absencing ourselves out of parts of history. And I think that we must always put ourselves in every element of history. From the early beginnings, because we know Abraham was called a Hebrew. Joseph said, surely I was stolen out of the land of the Hebrews. But then we get later in other books where the Hebrews, once they are displaced from their land, are not called Israelites, but they're called Jews. And that dates back to before, in my humble opinion, there were any, I don't believe that there were any European Jews in the time of Esther and Mordecai. That's my belief. Okay? And when I see, I met with a rabbi once, an Orthodox rabbi, and they had a book of Esther, and Mordecai was on the cover, And Mordecai was dressed with the black hat and black suit and white shirt. And I said to the rabbi, I said, Rabbi, why would you teach your children that this is the way that Mordecai dressed? You know Mordecai didn't dress like this. You know that. I know that. Stop. But no, they're training the children that the way you dress today is the way it's always been done. So they're trying to ingrain that cultural identity. I don't have a problem with that. In the same means, in the same measure, many in our community have sought to ingrain a cultural identity and then using that cultural, using dress as a part of that cultural identity. How you dress, how you wear it. So I know Israelites that won't wear a kippah. Well, they may wear one this size, but I have smaller ones too. But because some of them see that as being Ashkenazic. Okay, to me, I'm careful. I don't give anybody anything. I don't give the elements of that we know, writers, commentaries like Rashi. Okay, we know he's from France. We know some of his background and so forth. But we also know some of the background on Maimonides. He certainly was not Ashkenazi. He's born in Spain. Lived out the rest of his life in Africa, in Egypt. So we really, and we can't let what a lot of scholars try to do is take Egypt out of Africa and want to make it somehow or another some part of what the Greeks did, and that's very untrue as well. So for me, I don't give our Ashkenazi brothers and sisters anything expression of terminology. So being a Yehudi, being a Jew, and Ish seems to me is not being trying to imitate, but this is what you do. So you do is doing this is Jewish. Now there are communities that in the Israelite community that don't light Sabbath candles, and I believe that they don't light Sabbath candles because they don't see lighting candles as being a commandment exclusively given in the Torah. In Rabbinic Judaism, lighting Sabbath candles gives the idea of separation of time. We're going now into a sacred time. And so 2 candles are normally lit. 1 candle for keep the Shabbat and remember the Shabbat. So that's why normally 2 candles are lit. At the end of Shabbat, to break from that time of holiness, there's the Havdalah candle, very different candle. But it means to separate, and we're going now from the holy back into the profane. And so that's just the idea of it. It's a custom. It's a custom. It invigorates and it draws my grandchildren in when they spend the night with us and we kindle Sabbath candles. Or after Shabbat and we get home and they have dinner and after the ice cream and they do Havdalah. And so they get that. So it's for me, it's giving them something that impressing upon their young minds to remember. It's building a tradition. So we cannot give the totality of Torah, the totality of language, or the totality of words. Can't do it. I can't do it. So wherever I go, and I've traveled this world very broadly, I explain to them, when I travel, before I speak, my opening song is "What's My Name?" And through expressing that song, "What's My Name?" you know the words to that song. So you know what it says. And the people that I'm getting ready to speak to get it. One of my lectures...
Regardless of what type of crowd you're talking to.
I'm always.
Right.
And the crowds that I speak to are 95% Ashkenazi. White Christians, Ashkenazi Jews, I have been the Martin Luther King Day speaker for at least 7, maybe 8 cities in this country, and the city of Paris, France, which I didn't know observed the Martin Luther King Day. And
Paris, France?
Yes, I spoke
Wow.
to over 600 people in Paris, France, on Martin Luther King, and how Hashem worked it out. The Eternal worked it out. There was a professor there from Brandeis University who spoke French fluently because, like most black folk in America, I took French, but all I wanted to do was pass the course.
You didn't immerse yourself.
I didn't fall in love with French, the French language like that. So Paris, France had, as I said, maybe 600 or 700 people there, and some of the things he said, Rabbi, I don't need to interpret that. They felt your passion when you said it. He said, and it needed no interpretation, because you can say things in such a way that people may not understand your words, but they feel the feeling that you have put forth. So Tulsa, Oklahoma, Orange County, California, Newark, New Jersey, what's that other city? Jersey City, New Jersey. My God, Miami, Florida, Toronto. I've traveled from coast to coast, speaking in places, and I can't even begin to tell you how many colleges. The last time I was here, Rabbi Baruch drove me up to Stony Brook.
Stony Brook, right.
I had no idea how big that place was.
Yes.
I'd never heard of it before.
Yes, Stony Brook.
But they invited me to Stony Brook, and Bruce, oh yeah, I used to go up there. So he knew exactly where to go and took me right up there. So I go everywhere. I've been to the Hamptons, and on Long Island, and
End of Long Island.
yeah. You guys said, you've been to the Hamptons? Yeah, I've spoken synagogue, Orthodox synagogue. Been there twice. So it's to and my derasha doesn't change. My what I say about who we are doesn't change. Well, depending on then I wouldn't be true to myself. If I'm not true to myself, how can I be true to my God? And I have to be true to God. And that makes me true to myself. It absolutely does. So that's how I incorporate and inculcate all of these things.